Willkommen beim Nerds of Law Podcast. Die Nerds of Law, das sind Katharina Bisset und Michael Lanzinger. Wir präsentieren euch Neuigkeiten zu Recht und Technik, spannende Interviews sowie Tipps und Tricks generell zur geekigen Seite des Rechts. Denn vergesst nie, Law is the ultimate science.
Nerds of Law episode 126, The Ins and Outs of Words and Numbers with Ben Coldron. Welcome, dear listeners, to another English episode of the Nerds of Law podcast. We've got Benjamin Coldron with us from the Scotlin, so he will tell us what that is in detail, but why I introduced Ben is because I'm also a member of Scotlin. That happened because, well, of my Scottish husband, and Scotlin stands for Scottish Legal Innovation Network, which in itself was a obvious selling point for me. And Ben and I recently recorded a podcast for the Scotlin podcast, which you can find in the link in the show notes. But without much more intro, I will hand over to Ben. Thank you for coming, and please introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them about your background.
Hi there, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, both of you. I'm a member of the coordinating board at Scotlin, which is, as you said, the Scottish Law and Innovation Network. I'm also currently a research fellow at the University of Stirling, where I'm working with Guido Notaladiega on a project called From Smart Technologies to Smart Consumer Laws. And we're working in collaboration with universities all over, so University of Warwick, Bonn and Osnabrück. So yeah, my research interests include consumer law, mental health law and policy, human rights, which I did my PhD on. I'm also interested in the intersection between law and technology, and currently working on sort of things around the Internet of Things, fashion law, wearables, cyborg vulnerabilities, things like that. So it's all very exciting. But the main thing I'm here to talk about is the Scottish Law and Innovation Network, and we're doing exciting things with that recently as well. As you mentioned, we've just released a podcast, and we're trying to get some funding to organise our next conference and some other networking events in the year to come. So yeah.
Oh. Yeah, but cyborg law, you had me at the Internet of Things and cyborg law. So
yeah.
Are you doing $6 million man, like legal $6 million lawyer or something?
Not quite yet. I mean, the cyborg vulnerability paper, it's in review at the moment with the Journal of Consumer Law and Policy. And it's about.
You're not allowed to talk about it right now. I completely understand.
Yes, if I told you, I'd have to kill you, obviously.
That's perfectly understandable. But just one burning question I have ahead, and it's maybe the best of all dad jokes I made so far without being a dad. So it is also to Scotlin. So can you use it like I'm going Scotlin or I'm Scotland?
As a verb, yeah. We're Scotlining, yeah.
We're Scotlining. You're Scotlining. That's good.
I don't think it's in usage at the moment, but we could definitely try and make that a thing.
Perfect. Now that I have embarrassed Katharina enough, so I think I'll leave the questioning to her. I think.
Yes, it's okay.
Yes, please, no more.
That was that was early use for very many cricket noises and toilet flush sound effects.
Thank you.
So, but you've been, I mean, maybe our listeners can tell, maybe not, but you've been trained, you went to law school in England. So how did you get there where you're now? Where did you study, and how did you end up in Scotland?
Yeah, that's right. So I did a LLB, so an undergraduate law degree at the University of Nottingham. And then I did a bit of training experience. I worked in a place called Irwin Mitchell Solicitors as a fee earner for a little bit, mainly on medical negligence cases. And then I went straight into sort of legal academia. So I did research methods, masters, and a PhD in mental health law. So it was sort of a +4 PhD pathway, which integrated the Research Methods Masters with the PhD in law over 4 years. So that was great. And then I moved to Scotland and did various research contracts here. I've worked at the University of Highlands and Islands on a diabetes project, which was looking at smart glucose meters. And I also have done some work with about online gambling and stuff like that. So my sort of pathway into legal academia is slightly atypical.
Also, this was the smart glucose meters, because I remember when we had the GDPR here in Europe. There was actually I used to work with a company, and we also decided whether what is applicable on the side of data security, because some of them were actually hackable. Like it was
yeah. It's scary how insecure a lot of IoT devices are, even the sort of medical devices. And the glucose monitors that we were looking at in the CPM project were actually commercially available ones. They weren't sort of through the NHS or anything like that. So it was a company in Ireland that was collecting all this medical data, and they actually were of the view that they owned, or as much as you can own, they had the sort of rights to control who gets access to the data and things, rather than the patients who were providing the data. So there's all sorts of these sort of ethical and legal quandaries that come in to these kinds of projects, which is why we're here as legal academics, to sort of pick apart some of those issues and see if we can suggest some better regulatory responses and better practices from companies as well, is often what we're pleading for, because often the laws on the books are quite good, but with the pace of sort of change in the business models and the technologies available to companies, it's very difficult for the law to keep up with it. So it's sort of corporate practice that we need to be looking at, as well as sort of law and regulation.
But is there going to be another split in the road now that Data Act's coming in, and you obviously don't have to follow it anymore in the UK? Do you think there'll be another like subsystem, a different kind of approach to these things again?
I mean, in all honesty, I think we'll, as the UK, we will be following Europe's lead on these kind of things, because if we differentiate ourselves, big market players who are selling these kinds of devices will defer to the European regulations anyway. Because they want access to that even larger market than the UK. So that there wouldn't be much point, from a business point of view, wouldn't be much business sense in having two differentiated products, two different sets of sort of terms and conditions for the different markets. It could be quite onerous in terms of legal fees and all that kind of stuff for companies to develop those different approaches. So generally speaking, I think we'll end up sort of following the European example on a lot of it. But there might be opportunities for us to try and have higher standards potentially if we have a government in place which would want that. would care about that. Yes, exactly. So things like in consumer law, having a more sensitive way of judging whether a consumer is particularly vulnerable to potentially unfair commercial practice, we could potentially move away from the dominant sort of European approach, which talks about inherent vulnerabilities, so things like recognized diagnosed disabilities, to more sort of relational concept of vulnerability, where we're all sort of vulnerable as long as the digital architectures and things are in place to sort of identify and target our vulnerabilities with sort of these dark patterns, these AI algorithms and things like that. So there would be opportunities for us to maybe put in place higher standards of consumer protection, things like that. But who knows if we'll ever get there, if we'll ever get a government that's amenable to those sorts of arguments.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, but maybe it's a discussion for something with more alcohol, I think.
Yeah. Get us
But
in the mood.
let's double back to Scotland. It says on the website it's a knowledge exchange hub. So it says innovation in it. Is it just that the law is being innovated, or is it just IT law, legal tech, techie law subjects? Is that your focus, or do you deal with other things as well?
Yeah, so there's lots of sort of buzzwords used in the sort of description on the website, but we are basically looking quite broadly at the changes in law and society that are created or stimulated by the technological developments that are happening. Things like social media and big social media platforms, big data, artificial intelligence with the sort of generative language models. When these things come in, they have huge impacts, social impacts, and it's looking at what those social impacts are, what the sort of novel legal challenges that are emerging because of those big changes that technology stimulates, and looking at how law and in fact legal education can be innovated, can be adapted to those changes, so that the next generation of lawyers, and indeed the lawyers who are practicing at present, can sort of keep abreast of those changes and make sure that they're giving the best advice to their clients that they can give, and can come up with sort of new arguments, adapting old legal concepts to the brave new world, if you see what I mean.
Whoa. How's that going so far?
Well, Scotlin isn't doing all of that, to be fair, on its own. It's a fantastic community, fantastic network that's been built by. It was founded by Professor Guido Notaladiega and his colleagues Rosanna De Carter and Martia.
Some of our listeners might know Rosanna Ducato from the whole legal design bubble.
Exactly,
It's already a bubble, I guess.
Yeah, she is the expert in legal design. She's just brought out a new book, and we're actually about to host a workshop where she's the legal design guru.
Yeah.
So yeah, Rosanna is great. The other founder is Martia Seminska, who's also brilliant. So basically, they put together and founded the Scotlin organisation as a sort of knowledge exchange where legal academics, practicing lawyers, and people in industry as well, and in third sector organisations can come together and exchange their work. So talk about their research and the things that they're doing, so that we can together, sort of as an interdisciplinary network, develop thinking in this area, develop evidence-based solutions to sort of these complex legal and technological challenges, because it's not just legal questions, it's ethical questions, it's design questions in terms of how products and sort of digital services are built, and the interfaces the digital architectures are sort of designed, which is of course a technical question, a sort of design question, rather than a strictly legal question.
So what do you think, what would it take for lawyers to change their point of view? I often have the feeling, outside of the bubble, there's a lot of mindset work, or not to use more buzzwords, but there seems to be a lot of resistance to implement these kind of changes, to deal with the technology behind the stuff. What do you think it would need to make lawyers change to get them on board?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think is needed is to really sort of have a clear focus on law and technology in the education sort of stage. So in legal undergraduate degrees, we need more expertise, more modules focused on law and innovation. In terms of how lawyers qualify in England, we need to do a legal practice course to become solicitors. Within that legal practice course, that there really needs to be a much greater focus on using legal tech. So things like the communication tools and platforms to secure client portfolios and to communicate with clients through those portals, the case management systems. And as technology becomes more prevalent in the legal profession, lawyers and law students need to also be aware of the sort of ethical considerations related to confidentiality and data security around those platforms. And that really needs to be talked about and discussed at the education stage before people become like integrated into the legal bubble, as you talked about. And placements as well in sort of technology, legal tech startups and things like that. That there needs to be more practical experience integrated into that journey as well, I think.
That's a good idea. But I will step into that because you've mentioned bits and bobs about your education, and I'm not sure how much our listeners, and I don't know everything obviously about being trained as a lawyer in the UK. Could you maybe just run us through quickly how you'd get from, school to becoming a lawyer or even to become an attorney, or the different, the big different legal jobs?
Yeah, so I'll talk about England first because I'm a bit more sort of aware of, but I have sort of got some info on how to qualify in Scotland as well, which is slightly different. But in England, there's two different sort of categories of lawyer. There's solicitors and barristers. And solicitors are the sort of first point of contact when people are seeking legal advice. They sort of provide a wide range of legal services, from advising clients, initially drafting legal documents, even negotiating settlements and things like that. Whereas barristers are the ones who sort of represent people in court. In legal dramas, you see them, the barristers are the ones sort of dressed in wigs, banging on the sort of dark oak lecterns and arguing with the judges. So in order to become a solicitor in England, basically you need, first of all, you need an undergraduate law degree, an LLB. Although you can do a non-law degree and then follow that with a graduate diploma in law, which is just a 1-year short course. So you need the undergraduate degree. Yes, but I suppose they're assuming that they're wanting more interdisciplinary knowledge into the legal profession. So maybe that's
sorry.
That's a bit heretical.
Yeah, I think it's
that's a bit heretical. What do we do with this broad range of knowledge there?
Well, quite so. I think it's quite intense from what I've heard, the graduate diploma in law, in fairness. But that won't allow you to practice as a lawyer anyway. Just having a graduate diploma in law, you'd still need the legal practice course, which often takes a year or 2 years to complete. And the legal practice course is all the practical skills that you'd need to practice as a solicitor. So it's sort of submitting court documents, how to
shouting at other people, things we do in the court.
Yes,
faxing things.
Faxing things. Well,
all those
I fondly remember my faxing courses.
So yeah, all those practical, really essential skills for the aspiring lawyer. And then after the legal practice course, you do a 2-year training contract with a law firm or another authorised training provider. So some government departments and things like that have authorised training within their departments. And during the training contract, you'll gain more practical experience, and you'll generally practice in various different areas of law under the supervision of qualified solicitors. And then, once you've done your training contract, you can basically you apply to the Solicitors Regulation Authority, and then you are qualified to be admitted as a solicitor. So that's the solicitor route in England.
Okay.
To become a barrister, it's slightly different and slightly more sort of cloaked in sort of mystique and tradition.
Okay.
So,
that
to become
sounds
a barrister,
bit like having to chant things at night around a fire.
So if you want to
is a
become
bit like that.
a barrister, you first have to receive an owl and then go to...
It's very
like
Harry
that.
Potter, honestly.
Oh, very cool, very cool.
To become a barrister, you obviously you have to have your law degree, undergraduate degree, and then you need to do a bar course, a bar professional training course, which is sort of like the legal practice course, except for barristers. So it's the practical skills that you'd need in terms of arguing your case in court. And then what you have to do is join one of the 4 Inns of Court. So these there's 4 Inns of Court based in London: the Lincoln's Inn, the Inner Temple, Middle Temple, and Gray's Inn. And
Whoa.
you have to
It
apply.
sounds like you have to
these-
go to a hotel.
Yeah,
No, it's more like you have the bar and then you have the inn, and there should be a
well,
pub
they're
in
sort
there.
of like
It's all a
sort of
very
like
drunk
clubs.
situation. You've got an inn and a bar, and it makes it sound much less formal than it
Yeah, but you have the inner templates. It's really something like you join a house and then
It is. It is exactly like that, and part of the required sort of training in the Inns of Court include dinners and sort of moots and residential weekends with the other sort of club members almost. So
Jesus Christ.
it's very sort of old boys club almost. And so
You said it.
wonderful.
So once you've been through the Inns of Court and you've sort of completed those, you then undertake a pupillage, which is basically your apprenticeship, your practical experience, you're shadowing an experienced barrister. And upon completing that, you apply for a sort of permanent membership at the chambers. So at in the Inns of Court, you sort of signed on permanently. So that's a sort of archaic way to become a barrister in
But it
England.
sounds cool in a way. It sounds cool
is.
in a way.
I think people do quite like the tradition in some ways, but it can also be quite exclusive, and only certain types of people feel like it can be intimidating for certain.
But I've also once heard from a friend, like it also depends where you're a membership of, because there is also the Queen's or now King's Council, and you have to address them in a different way. The ones are the learned friend, the other is the esteemed friend, and things like that. I think I've heard it about that. It's a very complicated system, actually.
Yeah, and I wouldn't
Well,
know
because-
all of the different sort of etiquettes and things. You'd have to do the sort of
You don't know until you've joined, probably.
exactly.
Yeah,
You
they
have to
tell
know
you.
the secret handshake and
Yeah, that's it.
and all that kind of stuff.
But on a more practical standpoint, does that mean that then in a law firm you'd find solicitors and barristers? Or are they in different firms? Are they split up? How does that then work, like on the business afterwards?
Now, I mean, I think usually you have firms of solicitors. So where I worked, it was Irwin Mitchell Solicitors. We didn't have barristers sort of working within the sort of corporate group, if you like. Barristers tend to be sort of freelance, if you like.
Okay.
And and are instructed by solicitors.
It just seems doing double the work, where so if the solicitor, if the solicitor is working on a case and then it goes to trial, then you have to bring someone else in and explain everything to them.
Yep, it's not the most efficient system, looking from an objective sort of European standpoint.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Efficiency, courts. Well,
I think we
lawyers,
lost the efficiency at the point where we had to take a course in dinner.
Yeah.
But I think such dinner courses would actually be nice.
Well,
so how many dinners have you taken? Well, about 100. Yes, you qualify.
Only because you'd finish first, Michael.
Yeah, I know. And maybe your dinners, when we meet in person, it could be also taken into account. I'll bring it up before the bar, the Austrian bar. So,
but if you want to go into academia, you just then stay at uni until you graduate and then apply. Obviously, usually for a job at a university.
Yeah. I mean, so to be an academic lawyer, I think basically it's the PhD route. So you'd take your undergraduate law degree. You generally do a master's, and then you do a PhD in a legal subject with supervisors in the law department. Generally, PhDs take about 3 years. Mine took 4 because it integrated the sort of masters into it.
Mine's taking slightly longer than that.
Are you doing it part-time, though, whilst you're working?
I've signed up to grad school right after I graduated law school, which was, well, let's put it that way, my file's got some dust on it.
Well, but part-time is a nice way of putting it, actually.
Yes. I'm not saying which part.
I finished my PhD by terminating the contract with the university.
Yeah.
So I said, well, no doctor for me.
I mean, obviously
Doctor
here
no.
you need it for the academic route, but for everyone else it's more like a nice to have and an additional qualification for, if you want to go into big law or whatever. And because
we in
Austrians
Austria really like
title.
our PhDs.
Yeah, we like our titles.
Really like our titles.
We're just, since they
everyone
took
loves
away
a
the
title.
monarchy from us over 100 years ago, we just
You're
suffer
clinging on to the
for
It's also a bit
academic
curious.
titles, job
Yeah,
titles.
it's also a bit curious why we don't have things like these barristers with the esteemed friend and things like that. I think it would fit perfectly into our lawyers' culture.
I think we're too cynical for that.
Yeah, maybe
You reckon?
that's it.
It does sort of. It gives a nice sort of feeling of the law being a special sort of profession. It gives it a magic, and same with the wigs and the sort of fancy courtrooms.
Yeah, I mean, we do have fancy
it makes them feel better.
I don't know if I want to be the special kid.
But does that mean that access to law is a big issue in the UK? I mean, I've read all of Richard Susskind's books, obviously, but I mean, is access to law a problem there?
Absolutely. I mean, there's just been a big scandal with the Garrick Club. I don't know whether you've heard this
Not
sort
yet.
of on the continent, but basically a lot of the top lawyers are a member of a club called the Garrick Club, which is a gentleman's club in London, and they don't permit female members. So it was a big scandal because there was all these top judges who were a member of this club that excluded females, giving judgments about equal rights for women in the workplace and things like this. So, the legal profession is overwhelmingly sort of upper middle class, white,
Male.
So male, absolutely. So I think the way that particularly the legal training to be a barrister is structured, and these kind of these clubs and you have to suck up to the right people and you have to go on these dinners. I think it can be quite exclusive of people who don't necessarily fit into that world, and it can be quite intimidating. It can stop people even wanting to apply in the first place, So I think it can be a problem, no matter how fun it seems from the outside to have all these traditions.
I think I would be, not knowing the system. I'd be like, what's going on there? Because here, you do your training. Yes, we've got really long training, really specialized training. Austria is one of the longest trainings you've got after law school to become an attorney. So we've got another 5 years after that. But at the same time, it's not that hard. I mean, it's not that hard as from a socioeconomic perspective. Yes, you've always got the difference between, kids of people who went to uni are more likely to go to uni themselves. They're these like general things, but there's not a big problem to do it. Yeah, it sounds very, very weird, very elitist. So I think that's
it is a bit like that. I must say, in Scotland, it is much more European in style. There's not this division between barrister and solicitor in Scotland.
Okay.
We do have advocates and solicitors in Scotland, but the training to become an advocate, just rather than doing the sort of solicitor's practical legal course, you do a faculty of advocates training program. So you just diverge at that point, and there's not sort of the Inns of Court and stuff like that up in Scotland. So it's possibly more accessible and more friendly. So come and train in Scotland, all you students listening, and become rather than England.
I mean, we know that England and Scotland has got a different legal system, and Scottish law is a bit more a mixture between the Anglo-American and the European system. How do the skills transfer within the UK? I mean, is it obviously in academicus, it works for you, but can you just... So it works with an English law degree to work in academia in Scotland, but does that apply for other law jobs as well?
It is slightly tricky having an English law degree up here in Scotland, because I can't teach as many modules as other potential candidates when I'm applying for jobs, for example. So I'm sort of restricted to teaching European law, international human rights law. Okay. We do still teach European law here. It's still very much relevant.
Yeah, just in Scotland though, right?
So it's still a thing.
I'm not sure what
it's still a thing.
I think Scotland's still trying to keep the seat warm.
Yes, exactly.
That's a nice
There's still hope. There's still hope. So yeah, I am as an academic, as a legal teacher, I am restricted having just an English law degree. But a lot of the legal concepts, they have sort of equivalents which are subject to a different set of case law and slightly different interpretations, but are broadly similar. So what I'm thinking of doing is doing a conversion course so that I can gain my knowledge in Scots law, and that's a year-long course again. To sort of convert to Scots law, and that would give me more options in terms of lecturing and stuff up here. But it's not a massive barrier.
So you couldn't be an attorney and practice both in England and Scotland?
Yeah. Once I've done that conversion course, I would be able to practice up here in Scotland. Yeah.
That's quite interesting to have different legal systems within one country, theoretically. But hey, but
makes things very complicated.
Let's go back to uni. I'm quite interested from what you've seen, in England, and obviously as a teacher, as a member of faculty in Scotland as well. So how does the tech courses look? Like you said, it would need more. Are there already legal tech courses, diplomas, I don't know, specialized, from a more operational side, not the IT law side, as in, IP law and privacy law and all that, but is there a legal tech kind of course thing going on as well already, or is that not a thing yet?
Not in particular focused on just the legal tech. I mean, in our undergraduate law degree at Stirling, we have a lot of modules on law and technology. So I've I've been teaching with Guido on the media law module, and we're doing a huge amount on sort of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and generative AI as it applies to obscenity laws and pornography regulation. And so we're bringing in sort of law and technology themes into the sort of traditional law modules.
Oh, cool.
That's one thing. I think in the legal practice course, which you have to take to practice as a solicitor, they do a lot on the sort of case management systems, the legal tech tools relevant for researching the legal question that you might have to advise a client on. So there's all the sort of legal databases like Westlaw and LexisNexis that you have to be able to navigate. There's also the sort of case management and communication tools. So there's platforms where you communicate with clients, and that's sort of covered in the legal practice course as well. But I do think that whilst we are teaching the sort of practical aspects of using some of those tools, there's possibly not enough focus on some of the sort of more broader ethical and sort of the data protection and security issues, and some of those sort of broader law and society questions around those perhaps aren't much of a focus in those types of courses. So yeah, I think there maybe is a space for law and technology focused sort of modules which are specialised on those things within the undergraduate degree, but also adapting the legal practice courses. Yeah. I'm sure in terms of the apprenticeship stage, when you're working with a barrister or whether you're working in a law firm with other solicitors, you'll have a lot of practical experience with these sorts of legal tech products as well.
That's very cool.
And possibly a lot of discussion with people about how useful they are or how
yeah, we've got these discussions a lot.
Yeah, so that's part of the thing. It's using things, and then you discover the problems and challenges, and then things can improve.
Yeah, it just. I mean, if you're at least open to using them and trying it, then you're already much further. So maybe there should be like coding dinners or something. Never mind. So what I would like to know is what you work with. So, we're always interested in tool tips. What are your favorite like software and hardware tools where you say, okay, you need them to work, to organize yourself, to do your job? So anything you can recommend to us and our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the sort of software that I use on a day-to-day basis, the most useful thing for me is data analysis tools, because I do a lot of empirical work.
Okay.
I use NVivo 12 to do qualitative data analysis, for example. I also use quantitative data analysis software like Starter and R and Excel spreadsheets. I've even been dabbling with using Python recently to write some programs to organize and
I've heard lawyers use the word Python, but I've never. I think you're probably the first lawyer who can code R.
Well, very, very tentatively. I've been working with a statistician who was using it, and he's sort of helped me sort of dip my toe in it to some extent to, as I say, clean these databases.
I mean, I have to ask, because even if our listeners might not know what qualitative and quantitative analysis are, and I've only learned it from my master thesis and forgot 5 minutes after. So could you just please enlighten us again what it is?
So The qualitative data is generally interview transcripts, or even sort of textual analysis. It might be long documents, and it's basically going through and coding the different statements and stuff into different themes. So you end up sort of reducing the amount of data that you have to process to group it into different themes. So qualitative is usually working with words. Quantitative is usually working with numbers, basically. So the quantitative stuff, it's very, very complicated Excel formulas and sort of multiple regression analysis, things like that.
Geez, I wish they'd explained it to us like that at uni. I would have.
It is a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah,
in my master's degree,
really.
Well, there you go.
Makes sense for a newbie like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Words and numbers.
Words and numbers, perfect. Yeah, thanks. Words and numbers.
But that's actually very interesting because you're a lawyer and you still have to do all the, let's say, a bit more complicated techie things to do your job. So I think, you know, that's another thing where I think it's very interesting that, you know, all those you've got all these interfaces with other professions, like you said, you've got a statistician and stuff like that.
That's it. Cool. When you work interdisciplinary like projects, you pick up new skills, and I think that enhances you as a lawyer as well in terms of understanding how the law can be implemented in different contexts and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, you just get broader range of experiences and meet a broader range of people when you.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, I think apart from Excel, shout out to our listeners. I really want to know if any of you uses any of the other things Ben has talked about apart from Excel. I know you're using Excel. So is there anything else you can recommend?
Obviously, there's in terms of teaching, we're doing a lot of sort of remote learning. We're using a lot of remote learning software like Teams, Zoom, Canvas, things like that. Panoptico, which is to record the lectures.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't heard of that before.
A digital panopticon. They're always watching. But yeah, I mean, I find it's Canvas is quite useful in terms of interacting with students, because a lot of the time the lectures and online seminars and things like that can be quite sort of dehumanizing in a way. People have their cameras off and are not interacting really. They're on mute and you're just sort of talking to a computer. Whereas in Canvas, you've got these sort of live chats and people can post questions, and you can have a bit more of an interaction and a bit more of a discussion in a way that the students feel more comfortable with, I guess. So Canvas has been quite good in terms of the remote teaching and learning. But yeah, I mean, the only other thing that I can think of, which is a new thing, is we're using Turnitin historically to detect plagiarism in terms of assessments. And one of the things that's coming in now is Turnitin's AI writing detection system. So with ChatGPT and things like that, students are increasingly using those generative language models to sort of produce essays, right?
Yeah.
And we've got these new sort of
now I'm curious.
Digital tools to detect whether they're using AI or what.
Or can you not
I
say
don't
online
think I don't think it does work very well. And in any case, our university has actually come out with the policy that our students can use ChatGPT as a sort of research tool, but they have to sort of use their brains and make sure that what it comes out is accurate and put it into their own words and all this kind of stuff. It's not. Well, we've had like cases. I don't know whether you heard about that lawyer in America who was arguing a case in front of a judge, and he came up with all these historical cases to back up his argument, and it turned out they were all made up because he'd just asked ChatGPT to generate his argument.
So you can use it but can you use it to write, or are they allowed to use it to if you're like, okay, I'm stuck, I need, I'm throwing in a couple of ideas and ask ChatGPT to write a sentence out of it?
Yeah, I think they can use it almost like Googling something initially to get a sense of the issue or to get a bit of information, and then they need to use that to direct their own learning and their own sort of research using Westlaw or LexisNexis to find relevant cases. They still need to put in a lot of the legwork, if you like, but I suppose under the University of Stirling's policy, they can use it as a writing tool or as a proofreader almost as well.
Cool.
To help with just language and communication. So that's the situation at the moment. I don't know whether I think the Turnitin AI writing detection system is pretty crap at the moment. So if you just have a lot of quotes in there, for example, like from a judgment, it might sort of flag it up falsely. And things like that. So as teachers, we have to sort of not be completely reliant on the Turnitin AI algorithm as well. So I think there's some challenges that await us in terms of teaching and learning with these kind of tools available, but we'll see how it turns out, I guess.
That's very, very cool. Well, we've learned some more there, and I'm looking over to Michael if you've got any more questions, since you're still thinking about dinners.
Yeah, I'm certainly thinking about dinners, but I actually have a comment. I think that the policy of your university is quite good when it comes to ChatGPT, because we have many discussions also here in Austria and Germany, whether it should be forbidden or how it can be used. And we have mainly this, well, let's forbid it, but some universities actually say, okay, well, they're going to use it anyway. We'll find a way to work with it, which is very, very good, actually.
Yeah. And it is a bit sort of a King Canute type of situation where we're pretty powerless as teachers to stop the tide of people using this, because I think it can be a useful tool in some respects. It's just that you can't put in your question into the generative language model and then it generates something and then you copy and paste it in. That's not the end of it. You need to rework it. You need to check everything. You need to add in some relevant cases. It's sort of maybe helping people plan things out, but it's making sure that people aren't completely reliant on it and are using their critical faculties, I don't think banning it is practically possible.
No, we actually had some episodes ago a lawyer from Switzerland who is deeply into ChatGPT and large language models and things like that.
Yeah.
And she also said that if you do the prompting, the legwork, and try to prompt it, that you can get like a document out of it. It's after a certain amount of time, it's more beneficial to just write it and not let the AI currently do it, because it takes too much work, too much input actually.
Yeah, it's like any tool, isn't it? You can use it badly and you can use it well, I think.
Yeah.
And actually, there's been some really there was an artist who used AI to create this absolutely amazing projected artwork, which was sort of moving and generating these different types of coral formations on the ceiling. And he'd written the algorithm, he'd written the prompts and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't that the AI was creating the art; it was that it was a tool. It was like his version of Paint almost. So it's how you use the tool, and it can be used really well and it can be used really badly. I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So, but for the question, Gandalf or Dumbledore?
Gandalf all the way.
Ooh.
Perfect.
Very good. Ben, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
To have come and talk to us about Scotlin, about the English legal system, training system, all the weird stuff you do over there on the island. And yes, also thanks again for inviting me over. And well, we'll link obviously to your podcast as well.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Danke, dass ihr beim Nerds of Law Podcast zugehört habt. Auf unserer Webseite nerdsoflaw.com könnt ihr das Impressum, Datenschutzinformationen und viele spannendere Dinge finden. Dieser Podcast ist durch eine Creative Commons by Non-Commercial 4.0 International License geschützt. Das bedeutet, ihr dürft den Podcast kopieren, mit Freunden teilen, mit der Information, wo der Podcast herkommt und ihn nicht für kommerzielle Zwecke verwenden. Das Urheberrecht für die Musik liegt bei Mick Bourdain. Ihr findet seine Webseite unter mickbourdain.com. Live long and prosper. Eure Nerds of Law.